Good morning. Today is Monday, June 29th, 2020. Over Shabbos, I learned a great article in a Torah journal called Hakira. And the article is by Rabbi Aton Holzer and Rabbi Arie Folger. And it's on the Siddur and on prayer. And I hope to share several pieces from it with you over the next few weeks. And let me start with this one. So, prayer, by its definition, is a mysterious practice. How is it possible that an infinite God gives permission to finite human beings to address God and to be heard by Him? And somehow, through prayer, we break out of our finite, human, limited, material existence, and we rise above those limitations to reach for the infinite, to be touched by the eternal. And therefore, it makes complete sense that there is a strong, deep, innate connection between the prayer, the Siddur specifically, and Kabbalah Jewish mysticism, those aspects of Judaism that do try to help us through mysterious means to connect with the eternal. Now, clearly, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, is a major element of prayer in general, and the Siddur, our prayer book in particular. Some prayers that we have are overtly Kabbalistic. The prayer Brich Shmei Demari Alma, the prayer that we say when we open the ark and we're about to take the Torah out of the ark. That's actually a passage that's a quote from the Zohar, which is the major text of Kabbalah of Jewish mysticism. Prayers like Anim Zemiros that we say on Shabbos morning, L'chadodi that we say Friday night, clearly have many Kabbalistic references and require a certain knowledge of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, in order to fully appreciate them. And there are many, many more. However, since Kabbalah, the way we understand it, is meant for the few, it is meant for those who devote themselves and excel in this particular area of Jewish life, Jewish learning, but the prayer book is intended for a broad audience, for every Jew, for everyone. And therefore, there are many more allusions and references to Kabbalah that are partially hidden and that need to be studied and drawn out in order to fully appreciate. So I want to share with you this morning a very brief, tiny example of such an idea. Now, I've shared this with some of you before. There is a technique that is emphasized in Kabbalah. It's interesting how popular and a focus of modern cultural it's become recently. But there is a technique that is emphasized in Kabbalah, but it's available to everyone, and that's called visualization. So visualization is to hold on to an image in your mind's eye that connects you to the prayer and to the connection with God that should hopefully come through that prayer. And I have shared with you before a number of favorite images, especially that are used by Kabbalists. And one of the most well-known and most frequently used is the image of Jacob's ladder. So this refers to the passage in Bereshis, the Parsha of Vayetze. Yaakov, our patriarch Jacob, is leaving home. He is going to Lavan's house, where he will ultimately meet and marry his wives and have his children, but he's leaving home. And the Torah says that he came to a place and he slept there, Vayachalom, and he dreamed. And the content of the dream was, V'hine sulam mutzav arza, there was a ladder that was resting on the ground, V'rosho magia hashamayma, and the head of the ladder reached the heavens, V'hine malachei Elokim, and behold, the angels of God, olim v'yardim bo. The angels were ascending and descending this ladder. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav, and God himself was at the head, the top of this ladder. So that's the dream that Yaakov has. God speaks to him in this dream. And then the Torah says, Vayikatz Yaakov mishnaso, and Yaakov awoke from his dream, Vayomer, and he said to himself, Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, certainly God is present in this place. Manorah hamakom hazeh, how awesome is this place. Ein zeh ki im beis Elokim v'zeh shar shamayim. This place is the house of God and the gate to heaven. So that passage clearly expresses the essence of the prayer encounter. Direct communication with God, filled with awe and wonder. And for that reason, this scene is woven into the fabric of our prayers, alluded to in many of our prayers, sometimes in an overt manner, more times in a subtle manner. And one of the most subtle, which is what I want to share with you, is not relating to a specific prayer at all, but rather relating to the structure of our prayers. Specifically, the structure of the Shachris, the morning service. Now, what I want to share with you, again very briefly, is from Rav Shner Zalman of Ladi. He passed away in the year 1812, famous Hasidic figure, writer, scholar, teacher. And he explains this based on the ideas that come earlier from the Arie, the great Kabbalist of the 1500s. And he says as follows: this image of the ladder with angels going up and down and God at the top, that is the metaphor for our prayer, because our prayer starts on the ground. The foot of the ladder is resting on the ground, but it reaches to heaven. And therefore, we, as we are going through prayer, are supposed to be going through the same steps. And I mean that in several different ways. To be ascending, rung by rung, until we reach God, so to speak, and then descending. And that is supposed to be mirrored in our prayer, that we, our spiritual nature, our soul, ascends to the top and then descends. So it ascends rung by rung in order to be able to come into the immediate proximity to God, so to speak, and then descends, but very importantly, descends with the experience of having been in that proximity. And that's the reason that both the ascending and the descending is part of the dream. That is, it's not just to reach God, it's to reach God and then to be able, with that experience, to come back down. And Rav Shneir Zalman understands this based on a passage in the Zohar. The Zohar says that on this ladder there were 4 rungs, 4 steps. And those 4 rungs correspond in Kabbalistic thinking to 4 spiritual realms that a person has, ascending, starting from the most material and then reaching from there higher and higher, or I would say purer and purer in spirituality. And that is what a person is supposed to go through in prayer. And in fact, this is meant to correspond to 4 sections of the Shacharis prayer. Because you will note, the structure of the morning prayer is always the same. Of course, Shabbos and Yom Tov, there's slightly different content, but the structure is always the same. The structure always starts with a section called Birchas HaShachar, the prayers that we say immediately upon awakening, the first preliminary blessings. Then there's a second section called Psukei de Zimra, the verses of song, mostly verses compiled from Tehillim that, so to speak, get us in the mood. Then comes the section of the Shema, the prayers before, the paragraphs before and after, but the main part of that section is reciting the Shema, Shema Yisrael. And then the fourth is the Amidah. So that corresponds to these 4 levels, starting from the most material, when we wake up out of our sleep and we take notice of the fact that we are alive, we're grateful for being alive, we're grateful for the physicality that our lives will have this next day, and it goes step by step more and more spiritual until the 4th ring, the Amidah, when we are standing directly in God's presence and speaking directly to God. And that is the 4th rung that corresponds with this level, level of the dream. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. There is God standing at the top. And the Amidah is the moment, the experience, where we are able to appreciate that as much as is humanly possible. So therefore, we have these 4 sections, and they are meant to lead us, to guide us up these 4 rungs of the ladder. And then we have 4 rungs coming down. We have the Tachanun prayer after the Amidah. We have Ashrei Unevolet Zion. We have the Oleinu prayer. We have the Shir Shel Yom, the song for that day. And those prayers are meant to descend, to bring us back down from that high point, from that climax. We then descend. And the descending is as much a part of prayer as the ascending. So what that gives us is 2 consequences. The first is to try to be aware, as we are praying the morning prayer, to try to be aware of our progress through Shacharis, through the morning prayer, to try to be aware of rising rung by rung until the most immediate encounter, which is the Amidah, standing directly before God. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. There is God standing at the top of the ladder. and then coming back down, and here's the crucial point, bringing that holiness, bringing what we have gained as a result of that encounter back down with us as we descend the rungs of the ladder. The most practical takeaway from this is that we must leave prayer with a residue of that encounter that stays with us as we go to work, as we go to school, as we go back to our homes. Prayer, according to this model, is not meant to be an experience that we complete. It is rather meant to be an experience that sets the tone for everything that follows it. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you all soon in person.